Welcome to the Mount Pleasant podcast, featuring discussions and interviews about the people, places, and events that make Mount Pleasant such a special place.
This is the Mount Pleasant podcast. I'm your host, Brian Cleary, and all thanks to the great people of Mount Pleasant Magazine, I get the honor, the privilege of introducing you to Mount Pleasant, the people who make it such a special place to do business, to work, and even to live. We're introducing you to Mount Pleasant's best on the Mount Pleasant podcast. Certainly, there's a lot of talk these days about mental health. If you go back some years, that was a little bit taboo. Why has it changed? What's the importance of it changing? How much do we relate to COVID-19? Those are all important questions, and we're going to a local source, a local expert, to get some answers here on the Mount Pleasant podcast. I'm Brian Cleary, and John Gentry joins me. John from Mount Pleasant is the owner of Ellie Mental Health. And let's start right there, John, if you don't mind jumping in. Sure. The crisis, I guess, is a word that people refer to it now. Mental health is an important topic. Talk a little bit about that, and why do you think that is these days?
Yeah, I mean, I think the state of the world, the state of our country, I think we were already kind of heading down that road. I hate to say it with, social media and everybody being addicted to cell phones, having a teenage daughter, I've seen the level of anxiety increase in her and her friends. And then when you added COVID to that, being isolated for, a solid year, she actually started high school virtually. That was a disaster. And so I think there's a combination of, we just live in uncertain times. People are, worried about their health, their income. I know my daughter, there's kind of an unrealistic example of what a teenager should be when you look at social media. They're constantly comparing themselves to people that just aren't real. And so I think it's a lot of things. I think that it's definitely not getting any better. And so how do we address it? Obviously we need to provide more mental health counseling and just, services for people who are dealing with everyday life problems.
So I guess whether it's a result of COVID-19, social media, which, as you say, are all part of it, I guess the good news is that we're actually talking about it, because probably 25 years ago, 30 years ago, if you said mental health, that was a bad thing. For
sure. Most companies up until recently, insurance plans didn't cover it. A lot of people, even with insurance, some people they don't want their friends and family to know that they're struggling and they're, seeking help. And so they will do it discreetly. They'll pay out of pocket. And so it's kind of been a taboo thing that, I think with the Olympics and was it Simone, coming out with her mental health struggles and more athletes coming out, and it's definitely been destigmatized for sure.
So let's build on that a little bit, because obviously one of the things you offer is therapy. I think when people hear the word therapy, is it true? Am I off base? Some people, I think, would kind of get intimidated, like therapy. Ooh, that's really serious.
Yeah, that's for messed up people, Yeah.
Right.
No, it's, I think I think we could benefit from it. And I just wanted to put out a disclaimer. I am not a therapist. I own the practice. I've hired some really good therapists. I hired an unbelievable clinic director to manage the practice. I just saw that there was an unmet need, especially here in Mount Pleasant, giving, my history and trying to find good therapists. But you're right. I think people, that was kind of a hush-hush thing. If, you kept your problems to yourself, or you just try to cope the best, or, internalize things. I think guys in general are just bad at, internalizing versus, working through their issues. And so, it was definitely something that most people shied away from. I think now it's definitely more open, and people are more understanding. Employers are certainly more understanding. And so it's just something that we deal with.
We're talking about something very important to all of us today. That is mental health here on the Mount Pleasant podcast. I'm Brian Cleary, and where do you turn if you need help locally? Well, in Mount Pleasant, there's a place you can turn now. It's Ellie Mental Health. John Gentry is the owner of Ellie Mental Health. So let's go into talk about, because one of the points that Ellie Mental Health makes is personalization. And so when I go there, It's not just going to be, oh, the next therapist up is John, so you're going to talk with John, right? You're personalized. Take us through what that means to me as a patient.
Yeah, so Ellie Mental Health is a franchise. They started out in the Minneapolis area. It was two young therapists, social workers that kind of worked for the county, realized that there was an unmet need there. And so they built this model around authenticity and humor and compassion and, just their effort to destigmatize mental health. And so when I was looking at, what kind of business can I get involved in, and then I came across this opportunity. I really was drawn to the fact that, to your point, they don't just stick you with whoever's available. They try to ask some probing questions. So when you call in, you're actually speaking with someone who manages just this area. But Ellie has, I don't want to say created a formula or like an algorithm to try to best pair you with the right therapist, because we know that is critical in, number one, how effective therapy is, but how long you stay with therapy. Most people quit either because they feel like they weren't getting something out of it, or they just didn't have a connection. They just didn't like their therapist. And so Ellie really does a good job of trying to pair you, depending on what your issues, what you're looking for, with a therapist who specializes in that, who has, a background or a lot of experience in that. And so ideally, it's a great match. They call it Ellie Match because they're trying to match you with the right person.
Podcasting has exploded in popularity, especially local podcasts. As of 2022, 62% of Americans have listened to a podcast. 38% have listened in the last month. 26% in the last week. The podcasting audience is booming with no signs of slowing down. Call the podcast hotline to be featured on these podcasts or to receive information about podcast marketing. Call 843-530-0403 or visit carolinapodcasts.com.
You're listening to the Mount Pleasant Podcast.
And it seems if you go on the website, you can see the list and the number of therapists. There's a large amount of people to choose from, and also the amount of therapy that you offer, because you offer one-on-one individual therapy, but there are other amounts and different therapies that you offer. So it's both couples and family therapy that are offered. Those are some of those.
For sure. Yeah, there's individual, couples. We have a lot of times where a parent is inquiring about getting therapy for their child, which I've been down that road. We will be doing some group therapy with like trauma victims, like domestic violence. Like we plan on hosting a broad variety of different types of therapy. Even working with first responders. That's something that Ellie has a program that we definitely plan on doing in the near future as we, expand, get more therapists on board, et cetera.
And I also noticed that one of the other services that you offer, grief counseling, does that involve just only death, or is that just, is sadness?
No, you got to think. People, there's a lot of reasons why people grieve, whether they miscarry, which that seems to be, those rates are higher now than they've ever been. Whether it's, obviously losing a family member or losing a job, having a career change, anything that, that someone struggles with, whether it's grieving or, significant anxiety, our goal is to help those people with any of those issues.
So what is it that you would say to somebody who says, well, I could go here or I could go there, but Ellie Mental Health, it's different because?
Well, I look at it as this. I think all therapists, you're on the same team. You have a common goal, which is to help people in your community deal with issues, whatever issue that is. And so I would never in a million years claim to be better or put someone down. Unfortunately here in Mount Pleasant, the demand is just so much higher than the supply. And so, one thing that I would say some advantages that we have is that we are pretty much now contracted with every major insurance company. That took some time and effort to get done. And so it makes therapy available for more people. Here in Mount Pleasant, most therapists are self-pay, and I completely understand why they do it. When you're dealing with insurance, it's just frustrating. And they have the clientele to be able to pay these self-pay prices. But that excludes a lot of people. And so it provides an opportunity for more people to get therapy. I would say that I would put my clinic director, just experience level. She actually contracts with the state of South Carolina and supervises a lot of the therapists who are getting their master's degree and coming out of school. And so she's great. And, whether it's therapists that she's worked with in the past or just through interviewing, I feel like we're bringing on board quality therapists who are available to see people now. There's not a 6-month wait, which is great. And chances are, we'll take your insurance.
This is where the pages of Mount Pleasant Magazine come alive. This is the Mount Pleasant Podcast. And today we're talking about an important subject for all of us, and that is mental health. I'm Brian Cleary, joined by John Gentry. John is the owner of Ellie Mental Health. John, let's find out a little bit about you. Sure. You grew up here in Mount Pleasant.
Yeah, well, just north, Moncks Corner. Grew up in Moncks Corner, graduated Berkeley High School. I'm very familiar with the Low Country. Spent every weekend, at least the summer months, going to the Windjammer. So I love this area. This is home. I've bounced between Charlotte and Atlanta a few times, but I've always ended up back here. And this is where I grew up, and this is my community.
So after you left the Stags, you went on to Clemson University?
Yeah, I started at Newberry, played a few years of baseball, realized that wasn't going any further. So I transferred to Clemson, had a great experience there. And very long story short, ended up back here multiple times. So I'm in North Mount Pleasant, Park West.
Low Country keeps bringing you back home. That's not a bad thing.
Yeah, family, and it's hard to beat, even though I feel like I brought the Atlanta traffic back with me. It's still, it's first world problems.
Now we have the name. We've always wanted someone to blame for all the traffic here. John, way to take that one for the team.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious about your baseball career. What position were you at?
So I pitched in college. I wouldn't say I was a great pitcher.
You couldn't have been too bad if you made it to the college level. It can't be that bad.
I still play here. Believe it or not, there's a men's league here in Charleston, 38 and older, that I've played in for a long time. And so, I still do it. It's fun. It's, a great group of guys, and, it keeps me somewhat competitive and in shape.
It's a good thing. And one day, if we need somebody to throw out the first pitch at a River Dogs game.
I don't know if you want me. I can recommend some really good people.
Now, you mentioned the fact that, and I did in the setup, and you've referenced your 17-year-old daughter. So for parents that may be watching, listening into our podcast, that's got to be a bigger hill to climb, I think, than others. And I just look at my own experience as a kid. Talking to mom and dad wasn't always the easiest thing to do. And therapy for teenagers has got to be a little bit of a challenge, but that's something that you guys do offer up.
It is. And, personally, we battled with, number one, my daughter even wanting to go. When she was younger, so I'm divorced. I've been divorced for a very long time. She was very resistant to even therapy. And then when she would go, whether it was just because she had her mind made up or she actually didn't connect with a therapist, whatever it was just difficult, and I know a lot of parents battle with that, especially parents of divorce, or children of divorce, whether it's court ordered or not court ordered. But it's difficult. And, I wouldn't want to be a teenager in this day and time. I really wouldn't. There's just so many more issues. life was just more simple when we were growing up. I didn't have a cell phone until college. We didn't have phones at all in high school. There's a lot I'm happy in a way, or glad that, there weren't cell phones that, could provide evidence of stuff we were doing, in high school. But not only is it just the pressures, and, we talked about this earlier, the social media and what that I feel like has done for teenagers, their attention spans have gotten very short. There's a huge uptick in ADHD, but I feel like it's a lot due to the fact they're constantly scrolling and looking at videos every, 3 seconds. Yep. It's a new video, and they just don't have an attention span anymore. Where my daughter could, when she was in middle school, read a book. Now it's almost impossible for her to, sit down and do a 2-hour assignment or read a book just because it's not there.
Well, it's tough to find someone to talk to. First of all, you got to want to open up. And then is it a friend? Is it a family member? So now some of the stigma has been taken off in terms of talking about mental health to a professional. So if someone, whether they think they need it for their child, for themselves, for their family, thinks, okay, yeah, maybe therapy, maybe this is something I need to explore, what should be their first step in terms of reaching out to Ellie Mental Health?
Yeah, so you can go to the website. There's a couple ways. We're on Facebook, Instagram, but if you go to elliementalhealth.com, just type in the zip code, and it'll take you right to us. And, anywhere in the Charleston area, it'll take you to our location. But we also, still there's some people that don't want to come into an office, and they want to keep it discreet. And the one good thing that I feel like came out of COVID is we all learned that we can work virtually or do things virtually. And so that's one thing that we offer too, is kind of like a telehealth or virtual therapy with obviously a live counselor, but just like what you and I are doing, just talking over the computer.
So online, or I can go to the offices. And I have to ask you this because we've all seen Frasier on TV or a scene in a movie. Am I laying on a couch there talking to someone? Does that actually happen?
Well, we have chairs and couches in every room. Whatever makes, the client comfortable. But, one thing about being a franchise is they kind of have a model. All McDonald's kind of look the same, Chick-fil-A. Ellie kind of has what they call Ellie standards. And so the office space is really nice, very comfortable, very inviting. It's not cold, very soft colors. It's right kind of in the heart of Mount Pleasant off Stewart Ingalls. And so, they can either sit in a plush chair or lay down on a plush couch, whatever they choose.
Let me circle back around a little bit because you touched on it somewhat, but I really think it's an important part. When people think about health these days, a lot of folks are making health decisions, whether it's about mental health or physical health, and they make them around a monetary standard. And so people look and go, I just can't afford therapy. I know I can't. Touch on that a little more, because maybe you actually can, and maybe that's one of the big differences with Ellie Mental Health.
Sure. Unfortunately, just because of, I hate to say it, where we are, and because the marketplace will allow it, most therapists have just chosen not to work with insurance companies. And I completely get it. After going through the process, it is very difficult, not only getting credentialed with them, but everything associated with insurance companies can be difficult. So I'm not bashing people or therapists for not wanting to take insurance. However, for most people, I think even people that can't afford it out of pocket, why would you pay out of pocket if you didn't have to? And so it provides access for a lot more people. Typically, there's going to be a copay involved, depending on the insurance, and what your deductible or what plan you're on. But for the most part, we're paneled right now with 5 or 6 of the major payers. United, Cigna, Aetna, Blue Cross Blue Shield, which is the predominantly big. That's typically the biggest payer or insurance company in this part of the state, Blue Cross Blue Shield. And so, so it's, your deductible we handle, when they call in to schedule an appointment, they get all that information. They do kind of a benefits investigation on what their plan is, and let the client know, okay, this is what your out-of-pocket expense is what your insurance is going to cover. It gives them everything they need to decide whether or not they want to move forward with it.
So your suggestion would be, I've decided, okay, I want to get some therapy. I'm going to get in touch with Ellie Mental Health. Sure. I can just reach out to you guys. I don't have to go to my insurance provider first to find out.
That's correct. Well, so we will, once again, they will do a benefits investigation. There's sometimes that they will provide the codes that the insurance company asks for. And it's a quick call to their payer and say, hey, this is the billing code. Like, what would I be responsible for? What's my out of pocket? Or, do I have a deductible or, so I would say that we handle the majority of it on our end. There might be a phone call or two that a patient or client might have to make. But for the most part, if you have one of the 5-6 insurances that we carry, it should be just a deductible. And we let them know what that is.
Obviously, you got into this business for a reason. So what is your hope? The need, I guess, has to be the biggest appeal because you're going to be helping a lot of folk. Is that what it is down the line for you?
So I think, I told you at the beginning, I kind of looked for a business that I felt like, would just provide personally passive income, but something that created a need. And then when this opportunity came along, I thought, okay, there's nothing better and probably not a more needed market or service than the mental health service or mental health services. And so, buying into a franchise and not trying to learn it all on my own, I guess technically anyone could decide that, they want to open up but there's a lot involved in that, and so these guys have kind of laid out the blueprint and they've done it and they've been very successful at it. And so, by basically partnering up with Ellie Mental Health franchise, it's made it, much easier to bring it to fruition.
And so you do offer online therapy, but you've also got a brick and mortar building for people who are curious where you're at in Mount Pleasant. Where can folks find you?
Yeah, so it's 1435 Stewart Ingalls. It's 2 minutes from the TJ Maxx, that shopping area, and Mount Pleasant. So literally right off 526 in Bowman. So it's centrally located, super easy to get to, whether you live in Mount Pleasant or even if you live, Daniel Island or the beaches, or even if you're coming from West Ashland.
So Ellie Mental Health, while it's in Mount Pleasant and certainly serving the people of Mount Pleasant, you've reached out, and if I'm in the low country, I can turn to you. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I know there's a buddy of mine actually purchased the ones that are opening up in Somerville. I will be opening up a second clinic at some point, either on Daniel Island or maybe North Mount Pleasant. We'll see. But yeah.
And now that you've established this, we're not going to be bouncing out to Atlanta, Charlotte, or anymore?
No, this is home. Yeah. So actually, my girlfriend, who I've been with for almost 9 years, who I met in Atlanta, is finishing up her last year of teaching in Atlanta, and she will relocate here next summer after this school year ends. And so yeah, this will be home. Yeah, this is home. Most of my family's still in the Moncks Corner, Somerville area. So.
And if you're not working or you're not playing baseball, where do you hang out in Mount Pleasant? Are you a beach guy? Shem Creek? What's that?
Yeah, all of the above.
Okay.
When my girlfriend is here, we have to go walk the beach first thing in the morning. We hung out a little bit at the pool this summer, which is a first in a while for me since my daughter's not little anymore. But yeah, we love Shem Creek. The older I get, the less I want to go downtown. So the closer I can say, North Mount Pleasant, I'm going to do it.
John Gentry is the owner of Ellie Mental Health. John, one more time, seems like the best thing that people can do is find out a little bit more about you, and it seems like the best place would be your website. That address again is?
Yeah, so go to elliementalhealth.com, and I could give you the longer URL that takes you directly to Mount Pleasant, but if you just type in your zip code, it'll take you right to our specific page, Ellie Mental Health in Mount Pleasant.
It's such an important thing these days. It's great to have something right here in Mount Pleasant that we can turn to for the mental health assistance that maybe you or someone someone in your family needs at Ellie Mental Health. John, thanks so much for taking the time to join us today.
Brian, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
It's where the pages of Mount Pleasant Magazine come alive. We appreciate your time today. I'm Brian Cleary. Thank you for joining us for this edition of the Mount Pleasant Podcast.
Thanks for spending your time with the Mount Pleasant Podcast, your community, your podcast. Listen to past and future episodes at mountpleasantpodcast.com.